Hey there, this is James Valentine, regulatory attorney with Hyman Phelps and McNamara and patient advocate. You are listening to the Two Disabled Dudes podcast. If you'd like to check out my conversation, check out podcast number 107, although I encourage you to listen to so many more than that.
Welcome to the Two Disabled Dudes podcast. We believe life is about how we react.
All right, here we are. Another episode. Kyle, I want to first tell you that I did not play Risk this week. And I'm pretty proud of that.
Oh, man. Yeah, how'd it go? Like, how'd you feel about it?
You know, I feel great. I actually found myself, jonesing to play Risk at certain moments when I had, downtime, sitting down, eating lunch or whatever. But I also found myself utilizing that time to actually do something else.
Yeah.
That was something I've been putting off, such as a documentary. There's this documentary I've been wanting to watch, and so I've been watching a little bit of it each night while I eat dinner instead of playing Risk. So, in one sense, I feel more productive, so I'm proud of that.
And I imagine that not playing Risk, like, not only does that free up time, but it also, since you're going against that, like, jonesing feeling that you talked about, it sort of triggers you to do something more productive, right?
Yeah, definitely. I don't even remember what your one thing was last week.
My one thing was to listen to the book Daring Greatly because we realized that it wasn't even the right book that I talked about in episode 113. So I started listening. I have to admit that I'm not done yet, but I did listen to the part that we talked about in 113, and the concept was not right. I mean, it was generally in the right direction, but, like, the details were definitely wrong. And so, it was a great conversation in 113, but it was a little bit different than the book, so it was good to review.
Well, if this happens to be your first episode of the Two Disabled Dudes, Kyle and I started doing this in this season, where every week we're just simply laying out one thing to do that moves us closer to being a better version of ourselves, or being more careful with our time, or our diet, or exercise, or whatever it may be. So that's a check-in on this week's progress. Kyle, what's going on in your head today?
So, this week, all right, first of all, I listen to the Adam Carolla Show podcast.
Mm-hmm.
And no matter what people think about Adam Carolla, I've been listening for a long time, and he, over the last few years, he has been jumping in his pool every single morning. And the pool is, well, maybe in the winter it's colder, obviously, but it's super cold. And he says, it's just a great, like, reset. You dunk your head under and you force yourself to do something uncomfortable every single day, first thing in the morning, and it just kind of sets up the day, right? So I've been, for the past, 6 months or so, every time I take a shower in the morning, I turn the water on freezing cold. At the very end of the shower, I turn the water on as cold as it'll go and do that for a minute. I count down 1, 1,000, 2, 1,000 in my head.
Wow.
And so I was getting out of the shower and just thinking about the whole thing and thinking to myself, I wish I wasn't disabled, because I would love to jump in the pool. Like, that's something I would love to be able to do. And then I was like, wait, like, that would mean that my life would change totally from what it was.
Totally.
Just because I want to be able to jump in the pool on my own 2 feet or whatever. I was like, that doesn't make any sense. but it just kind of triggered the thought of, like, are there things in your life that you would be able to do, and if given the chance to snap your fingers and FA would go away, would you do that?
So are you asking if FA would go away for me individually, or it went away from the world?
I think that's a good distinction, but I guess in my mind it was like FA would go away for the world. There's no more FA. I think in one aspect, it's a question about disability. Like, would you be not disabled if you could, right?
Mm-hmm.
The other, like, aspect of it is, would you take FA away from the world? Yeah.
There's such a wrestling with that one. And I'll just give you my knee-jerk reaction because, again, you and I didn't dialogue much about this before. If I could get rid of FA worldwide, yes, I would. And I think I would because it's the entire world, right? If you say, Sean, I meet a genie in a bottle and they're going to grant me one wish for me individually, then no, I probably wouldn't. Like, FA is very much a part of who I am and the life I've developed, and I wouldn't choose to get rid of it just for my own sake. But I feel like the whole point of the effort you and I put forth in the world is to eradicate FA, right?
Yeah.
Cure it or treat it. So if it was easy as snapping my fingers and it was cured, why wouldn't I?
Yeah, you're right. And then I think, I think we appreciate FA because it's this challenge and it's something to push against. One of the concepts in my book is that you can't make a push unless there's something to push against. And for us, I think a lot of it is that's what FA is. But also, for a lot of people, like, it would make life so much better if it was gone because they're much more severely affected. You and I are lucky that we're 38 years old and we're still alive, for one thing. There's a lot of people in the FA community that don't make it that far, just in numbers, and then
Sure.
When you factor in quality of life as well, I think for me, sometimes I feel grateful for FA because it provides that opportunity to make my push. But it also makes me very uneasy to have that feeling because I know it's something different for so many people, right?
It's hard, sometimes to be the voice or a voice because, like you said, it's so different for so many other FAers. But yeah, there's certainly value. It's brought a lot of value to my life. Like this podcast wouldn't exist if it wasn't for FA. And we've had similar conversations before. But yeah, I would, if life were, we could assume life would be easier without FA. And I wonder what else I wouldn't appreciate in my life.
Yep.
And, I would have always taken the easy route, or maybe.
Yeah, like, I talk about it in my book, too, is that, like, if I didn't have FA, I would be sitting in a cubicle and, like, just working away 9 to 5 until I die. Like, so I think it's partly given a ton of meaning and purpose and perspective, right? Like, we always talk about life is about how we react, and, like, there's got to be something to react to, right?
Sure.
And I guess partly those opportunities to react to what life throws your way present themselves no matter what, and we always talk about it too, whether it's disability or financial or family or relationships, whatever it is. So maybe also in that respect, it's not so much about FA, but it's about just the way we see challenges.
Let's imagine for a minute FA goes away. However, we snap our fingers, there's a miracle drug tomorrow, whatever the case may be. What would you do? Next month, next year, next week? What are you going to do?
Good question. I always think to myself, like, if, like, say there's a miracle drug, like you said, tomorrow, I would go on a speaking tour about how we got there and just facing challenges. Like,
Sure.
I don't know. Or maybe I would spend more time on the podcast and develop that. And, like, I don't know.
Or go get a pool so you can jump in. Like, go buy it. Yeah. Yeah. I kind of wonder about that every now and then. And you just throwing the question out, I start thinking about other rare diseases or other folks that we've been connected to. Of course, like I said, we'd both eradicate Friedreich's ataxia if we can. And if we could, we'd eradicate all rare disease, right? And cancer and AIDS and everything else that's inflicting this world. But I wonder, of all the people that we've been able to influence to one degree, if it wasn't for FA, would we have that place in their life? Like, I think about, flip the roles, right? Lance Armstrong. If he didn't ride bikes, would I care about him? If he didn't battle cancer and then ride bikes, would his story be as valuable?
Right. Yep.
Not saying his value is attached to his cancer, but I'm just wondering, when you hear of others overcoming, how does that encourage you to overcome or at least face adversity in your own life? And I just wonder if we've been that catalyst for even just one other person, then it's worth it, right?
Yeah.
So I'm not quite sure where I'm going with that thought, but I definitely want to recognize that even though FA might go away, there's still work to be done in the rare disease community or in the hardships of life community. And I'd want to continue encouraging people to live beyond those circumstances, whatever they are.
Right.
At least I think I would.
Yeah. Yeah, along the lines of your thought, like, we would have never even thought to do Race Across America unless we had FA.
Yeah.
Like, it doesn't make any sense to ride your bike across the country unless there's a purpose for it, right? And the purpose was to get rid of FA, to raise a little awareness, to get a little further in the battle against the FA. And so, it goes to the thought that our greatest challenges produce our purpose in life. And that's something that I've read from a quote from Steve Gleason. We're going to have Blair from Team Gleason on the show next week. And, I want to talk to him a little bit about that because I think that's a big part of why we all do what we do. Maybe that's another thing is like what I think sometimes when I'm so grateful for FA, I think because my purpose in life was dropped into my lap. Like, I think that's really tough for a lot of people, right? For all of us to be like, what is my personal life? What the heck should I do with my time here? And, for you and I, that choice is maybe a little bit easier because FA was forced upon us.
Well, let's shift gears a little bit. I'm curious, just now that you've got me on this train of thought, are there things in your life that you would change? Or what are the things in your life that you would change that maybe wouldn't have the sort of life-changing effect of getting rid of your disability? Like, if you could, I don't know, bench press 200 pounds, would you want to? If you could have less beard hair, would you want that? What are,
Right.
and again, this, I don't mean to be super shallow, but we also don't need to be as philosophically deep as getting rid of FA. What is one little thing in your life you would change or get rid of if you could?
One of the things is like a little thing that I feel like we'd take for granted. Like, I would love to be able to play Frisbee. Like, that is so random, right? But I feel like it's just a really simple joy. And obviously, I've found many things to replace that simple joy. And, I don't miss it every day. But if you challenge me to think about those little
Sure.
things, that's one thing. I'd love to be able to play Frisbee with my dad and my brother and, like, chase around my niece and nephew. Holy cow, that would be cool too, What about you?
I think so this is so silly, but I guess if I could change one thing, there's a part of me that wishes I had some minor low-level interest in sports. But I really don't care. And I say that because that's what I feel like that's the first thing that comes up in conversation, right? Especially when you're with the guys or dudes. Like, I remember last year I got into a car with a coworker, and that was really the first time that he and I had ever been just by ourselves, right? We'd been around each other and worked with each other quite a bit, but when you're in the car and it's just the two of you and you're driving for an hour, like, that's where the rubber meets the road, right? Like, who are you? What are you about? What do you, things like that. And I remember 5 minutes down the road, he just straight up asked, So do you watch baseball? Or, what sport do you watch? I don't remember the question, but it was straight up like, hey, let's talk about sports. And I was like, nope. Go for it, but I can't add to the conversation. I don't mind talking about him or listening about him, but I can't add to the conversation.
Right. Yeah.
And the same is true when I'm introducing or I'm meeting a first-time group of new hires, and I've got 10 to 15 people in a room. And every other person's like, yeah, go Niners or whatever.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, yeah, cool.
Cool, dude. Yeah, no, I love that you bring that up because that is something that has nothing to do with FA, right?
Sure.
Like, we look at our condition and blame it sometimes for it's our first impulse is to blame it for our shortcomings in life. But in this case, you're like, I'm gonna choose something that I noticed in me that I would love to, but it doesn't have anything to do with my disability.
Yeah. I do wonder would it have a different impact on my life? Would FA have a different impact if I actually love sports? I'm sure it would, right? Because then not only do I have a love for the game or any game, but then FA would take that ability to play away. So then that, I guess, would make it even more challenging and more maybe difficult, frustrating, depressing.
Yeah, that makes total
maddening.
sense.
But now it's like somebody wants to go out and play catch. I can use the FA as an excuse, like, oh, I can't. But also, I don't want to.
You're not like, oh, I hate that. I don't ever want to do that. You can just say I have FA. So let me ask you this. You say your thing is not sports, but you were in an improv troupe and you've done some theater and acting and whatever, like you've dabbled in that. And so has your disability affected your ability to participate in that kind of stuff?
Yeah, definitely. And funny you ask about that because there's one particular thing that's been really coming to the forefront just recently. It affects that area, I think, in two ways. Especially when you think about improv or theater, there's a lot of physicality involved in that. Like, you've got to really come alive and overplay the character, right? So let's say I am just somebody walking down the street. I can't walk like Eeyore. You have to walk like Tigger, and it has to be very animated for it to give the impression that you're just walking. Well, of course, in any sort of physical activity, that's hindered, right, in FA. So it's difficult to make it larger than life for a camera or for the stage. But I think more noticeably lately is the way FA has impacted my speech. If I don't talk very clearly. I mumble. I can't talk very fast. And I didn't really think about the speed in which I deliver words until a few months ago. And I didn't think much of it. But then it came up again last week. A few months ago, you and I met in LA. And we did a silly little short story.
Oh, yeah.
A short, 5-minute whatever with our Hollywood friends, Kevin and Megan. Although it's not been produced, I remember one scene where we were set up in a car, or I was set up in a car with Megan, who was the driver, and a couple different, audio and film guys. And I remember Megan, also the director, she let me deliver my scene, and then she was like, let's try again. And we tried it again and again, and then eventually I remember her specifically saying, say it a little faster. And then she said it, and in my head I'm like, yeah, that's how I hear it. Like, it definitely needs to be faster. But I couldn't get the words out faster without mumbling. And in that moment, I realized I can't. And I can't because of FA or because I haven't trained myself or practiced enough with FA as a challenge to work around. And then, of course, you're getting ready, or Fair is getting ready for the Ride Ataxia Global Challenge. And there was a little piece that a few people worked on recording-wise. And in my head, I hear those lines differently than what I was able to deliver in the moment. And I found it to be frustrating because in my head, it's much smoother and faster. But when I hit record and I start doing it myself, it doesn't come out the way I think it's supposed to.
Right. Yeah. No, I agree. I feel like pace and tone and delivery is so important. It's like, it's just as important as like content, right? And when that gets affected, it's really tough. One of my friends with FA, he says that the most defining characteristic of a person is their voice. And for that to be modified or in many cases taken away, that's a tough thing.
Yeah.
So, Sean, what you're saying is that if there were one thing you could change, it might be your voice. That really affects the things you love to do as far as like communicating and whatever acting, right? In this case, and so
Yeah, and well, to be fair, the more it's sitting with me, I wish I could write better because that's, I wish my reflexes were a little more under control. I wish I wasn't tired. The list goes on, Kyle. There are so many
yeah.
things I would change, but I think it's important to just recognize that this is true for everybody, right? Whether it's disease
Right.
or not, I think there are things that Bill Gates would change if he could, or Jeff
Oh my
Bezos, or
gosh.
Warren Buffett, or Mark Zuckerberg. Who have actors, singers, artists, whatever. I think everybody's got a list, right?
Yeah.
And I think it's important to recognize, no matter who you are, what your walk is in life, identify the things that are in your control and begin chipping away at those things. And don't hold it against yourself, the things you can't change. I can't, my nose is what it is, all right? I'm not going to go pay 20 grand to get a new nose or whatever. So who cares? But I can change maybe the way I eat or the way I exercise, or I
Right.
can change the way I sleep and how much rest I allow myself, and I can change my timing and avoid playing video games all day on my phone and watch something more productive or read a book or whatever. So I want to make sure that I do believe it's healthy to talk about the things that you would change, and maybe it helps keep it in a manageable perspective or a manageable place in your life where it isn't so overwhelming and overpowering that it causes you to sink into a place of depression. So I want to say that, but I also want to say that it's also valuable to talk about and identify the things you can change,
Yep.
so that with your friends and your family and your community, you can start taking action and chip away at those things that are in your control.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I love this conversation because, it started out as would you get rid of FA if you could, and we said if it was just me, no, I can live with FA, and it's become such an incredible part of my life, and it's really enhanced my life, right? We both agree with that. But we also agree that the world would be a better place without FA as a whole.
Sure.
And then, I just really love talking about these things because they evolve into lessons that we can think about and maybe apply in our lives.
Yeah.
Like you said, be in control of the things that you can and change those.
Yeah, the only thing I don't like about these conversations that are really off the cuff, I guarantee you, I'm going to go replay this, and, through the editing process, I'm going to wish I said something different. But that lends to, I think, growing in our own lives, right? Like,
Totally.
okay, I can challenge. I hear what I thought today, and then next week I'm like, actually, no, I don't think I agree with myself on that anymore.
Yeah.
It helps us become better people all around.
I agree. So, Sean, on the subject of becoming better people, we all have that in the future, right? Oh, we're going to be so awesome. But what are we doing today to make that happen? And so that's why we have the one thing, right? So what is your one thing that you're going to do this week to get to a bigger goal?
My one thing actually has to do with one of those things that I wish I could change.
Yeah.
I'm going to do 50 push-ups every day. I wish I had broader chest and shoulders, and doing push-ups every day is something that can help with that. So, and of course, I want to just stay strong, right? 50 push-ups every day.
So I also think, like, okay, fine, you do that. What happens at the end of the week? One of the points of the one thing exercise is that you're not saying, I'm going to do 50 push-ups for a year, every day for a year. What you're saying is, you know what, let's go for a week, and then maybe I can go for one more week after that. And then all of a sudden,
One of my favorite speeches or talks I ever heard was from A.L. Williams, which I mentioned in a recent episode. In his philosophy of life, he says he does everything routinely, but every time a little bit more. And he's talking about mostly his example was exercise. And he started swimming laps, and he would swim for 30 minutes plus a little bit more. So he made it a point to say, whether it was working on sales calls or exercise, he did everything in his life plus a little bit more. And I think that's the way it goes with push-ups. I'm going to do 50 every day this week, but then next week I'm going to do a little bit more. And the week after that, a little bit more. And really, the one thing just helped jumpstart some new habits that lead us to a better tomorrow or a better next year.
Yep.
So with that in mind, what is your one thing? What are you working on this week?
At the beginning of this year, I committed to having a clean apartment. And I'm not sure I really put parameters around it, but this week I really want to focus on the sink and keeping the dishes clean all the time. Maybe the rule is, a dirty dish can't sit in the sink for more than an hour or something. But you know what? Ultimately, I want to go to bed every night with a clean sink. There we go.
Yeah. You and I would not be good roommates. There are two big areas that are pet peeves for me, and that's the bathroom and the kitchen. And I hate waking up to a dirty kitchen. I don't mind dishes drying overnight, clean dishes being left on the counter or the strainer or whatever, but not dirty ones.
Yeah. No, I think it is not cool to me either, but it's not something that just really gets at me. You know what I mean?
Sure. So it's not worth staying up an extra 10 minutes. I get it.
Oh, man, when you put it that way, then...
Well, I don't know how bad or, how many dishes.
Yeah.
No. Well, you never know.
Right.
I don't know what you're up against in the kitchen, so.
Yeah.
Anyway, our thank you notes. We're going to wrap this up with another thank you. Of course, if you've been around for any episodes, you know that Kyle and I believe in the importance and value of expressing gratitude. So we have chosen to express that at least one way on the podcast. So I want to say thank you to a random stranger. I don't even know who it is. But earlier this week, I was in line at Starbucks, a regular routine for me, drive-through, and the car in front of me paid for my order.
Oh, nice.
And I think that was the first time that's happened. I think I've had it done at toll bridges once or twice, but at Starbucks, the guy paid for, or the person ahead of me paid for my order and made my day. So thank you.
So how are you going to pay that forward, Sean? Do you just take it home with it, or what?
So that's actually the life lesson for me also this week. Because in that moment, I was so excited and like, wow, how cool. So I took my coffee and I left. And then I told my coworkers, I'm like, hey, you guys wouldn't believe it. And the first question every coworker asked when I told them the story, did you pay for the person behind you? And I'm like, I didn't even think about that.
Oh, man. You're that guy, gosh darn it.
Yeah. No, and what's worse is what if it had been a chain all morning?
Yeah, and you broke it.
oh, let me pay. And then it got to me, and I was like, sweet, bye. You know, like, I'm out of here. So I gotta keep that in mind.
Yep. So my thank you note goes to my real estate agents, Jackie and John, and they are an awesome team. And I've been working with them like I've said for a year and a half now, trying to find a place. And Sean, just this morning, I got a call, and we put an offer on Friday, and they accepted it today.
What?
So
Alright.
I am under contract, and we'll close in like 2 months or something like that. But anyway, thank you to Jackie and John for all the work that they put in, and it's not over yet. There's still a ton. It's almost like the work is just gonna start now. But
Sure.
yeah, that's my thank you note.
Well, how exciting and nerve-wracking, I guess, that you are under contract. You'll have to keep us posted on that whole process.
Absolutely.
Thank you again for another conversation, Kyle. Listeners, thank you, of course, for tuning in today. We appreciate you, and we'll encourage you to express some gratitude, start working on what you can control, and until next time, keep living with urgency.
Thank you for listening to the Two Disabled Dudes podcast.
Find us online at twodisableddudes.com and subscribe on your favorite podcast app. Connect with us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
Special thanks to our friend and audio producer, Jake Tompkins.